Hello, my name is Paul Shaw. I'm a design historian, calligrapher, typographer, and graphic designer. I started doing these walks in 2005 at the request of Carol Waller of the TDC. She's always called them type walks or type tours. They're not really type walks, they're lettering walks. So what we want to see in New York or in other cities I've done the walks to, we want to see lettering. We want to see things that we don't see on our computers and in our general life as graphic designers. We're interested in seeing new forms of letters, and some of them may have inspired typefaces, some of them may even have copied typefaces, but we're looking for the letters themselves, whether they're carved in stone, whether they're cast in metal, whether they're spray painted, whether they're scribbled, whether they're in wood, plastic. We want to see letters. 42nd Street is often associated with Times Square, but it actually goes from the Hudson River to the East River, and it changes quite a bit. Welcome to New York. Everybody thinks that New York in lettering is Manhattan, is Times Square, but Times Square is not what it used to be. Times Square no longer has all the neon and the glowing smoke rings. It's now all digital screens, as you can see if we look all around us. There's one thing here in the middle, in the heart of Times Square where I'm standing, that still evokes the old days. The Paramount building sign is actually light bulb lettering. The stuff we had before there was neon. It's a beautiful script. It's amazing it's still lit up. One example of the old neon in the area, not at Times Square itself, but nearby, is the Hotel Carter. We have your usual geometric sans serif. This is a sort of letter that inspired the Gotham typeface. We've moved west now. We're on 43rd Street, and we're looking at one of the great buildings in New York, the McGraw-Hill building. It was built for the McGraw-Hill Publishing Company, and it no longer has McGraw-Hill in it, but fortunately the lettering at the top still remains. It's actually terracotta. It was recently restored, so it looks really, really nice and bright and white. The letters are enormous. They're very Art Deco, and you can see that in the thick and thins.
How tall are they?
I don't know, 8 feet, 10 feet?
Wow.
When we do lettering walks in New York, we're always interested in seeing some of the famous things, the really cool things like McGraw-Hill building, but we also are interested in the ordinary things, the things that we don't know about, we haven't expected, and we stumble upon. And so here we're seeing the LaSalle Academy, and if you look very carefully in the brickwork above it, you'll see what the original name was, Holy Cross School. But what's really cool here is we have two entrances, one for boys and girls. I always like the girls' entrances best because they've got the G. And the G and the R are two of our most favorite letters in the capitals. And that G is a typical 19th century Anglo-American G where you can't tell it's a G. It looks like a C. It's so pathetic. The R is quite nice though. A good strong leg. One of the things that we're always keeping an eye out when we walk around looking for lettering in various cities is vernacular lettering done by non-professionals. And we have a great example right here, clearance sale with the R and the A that's been added in. And the little umbrella, which I really love. I'm not quite sure why you have an umbrella there, but we also have Kilroy, and then English is my second language. One of the problems of doing lettering walks in New York is that you're never sure what will still be there when you take the tour. And so here we can see a giant hole. I don't remember which buildings have been knocked down, but fortunately one that has not been knocked down is Kaufman's Army and Navy store, which I've always loved for its hand-painted sign, very American with the stars and the stripes. Even the building itself is red, white, and blue. But look at the terrific K in Kaufman with a little horizontal stroke. So here we are in Grand Central Station, and unfortunately we don't see much in the way of original lettering in it. We see ATF or Garamond number 3 that Massimo Vignelli proposed as using for the signage, ticket vending machines, New Haven line departures up above. And if we go out to one of the entrances, we'll see one little bit of older lettering that has survived. I think that if the renovation had occurred recently, that they would have hired somebody like Jesse Reagan or Christian Schwartz to make a custom typeface based on the lettering here that's in this inscription in honor of those who worked to build the station originally. It's a distinctive bit of lettering. It's the sort of thing that we're looking for on these lettering walks, as opposed to seeing things like Garamond number 3. So here we are outside, and we are looking at two buildings that sort of reflect the split in 1920s New York and American architecture. Art Deco Channon building to our left, and straight ahead from us the Bowery Savings Bank, which is more Gothic revival. We can see lettering reflecting that in a mutual institution up above, letters that are reflective not of black letter but medieval versals, initial letters. And we'll see similar letters for the Bowery Savings Bank's name near the main entrance, and for a side entrance leads to the subway. You'll see a miser with his bag of money. You'll see a squirrel, which means somebody who's gathering nuts for the winter. There's a beehive, also gathering honey. So these are symbols of savings for a savings bank. The lettering itself is very classical. You can see that in the G and the S and the R, but there's a little hint of medieval, not quite as much as in the lettering we saw earlier in the A with the flat top and the serif that goes over to the left. The Channon building is one of the unrecognized masterpieces of Art Deco in New York. I mean, it's famous especially for its radiators, Art Deco designs. It does, though, on the outside have one bit of Art Deco lettering that's quite nice. You can see it here above the doorway. There's also two versions of it on either side of the entrance, stacked up. Typical Art Deco, thick, thin contrast, decoration in the thick part. These are letters that are essentially fat faces that have had their serifs taken off. And people think of Broadway typeface as distinctive of this, and Broadway came out at about the same time, the same influence. But these are original letters, and there's no copy of them in typeface. We started with the McGraw-Hill building on the west side of 42nd Street by Raymond Hood, and here we are at Raymond Hood again on the far east side with the Daily News building, or it just says the News. Doesn't even bother to say Daily News or building. That's how brash the newspaper was when it started out in the 1930s. And you can see a quotation below that says, "He made so many of them." That's a reference to the working man. The Daily News was a newspaper dedicated to the working man, not like the New York Times or the old New York Post, pre-Rupert Murdoch, which were more upper class or middle class newspapers. The News building has this terrific early 30s Deco style lettering. It's not Deco in the Channon building style. Without the decoration, it's more simple. But look at the little chamfers in the S. We'll peek in, because there's some really nice lettering in the floor. This globe of the world is surrounded by a compass rose, and if you look in the floor, you can see that there are the names of cities and numbers. They're distance from New York. You can see Spitsbergen, which is Norway, Boston, New Haven, Halifax, which is Canada, Providence, Oslo, which is Norway. It's an interesting mix of cities, Stockholm, Sweden, London. And I often think one of the typical aspects of Art Deco lettering is an exaggeration of proportions. So we're going to finish our tour of 42nd Street near the East River with Tudor City, an amazing complex built where I believe cattle yards used to be in New York by Fred French and Company. And it's like the Bowery Savings Bank, and that's not Art Deco, it's all about Gothic revivalism. But there's a little church in a Tudor-esque style near it. I'm not sure if it's officially part of Tudor City, the Church of the Covenant. And the lettering is actually what I would call type, not a typeface that you might know, but lettering that's been prefabricated and you can purchase and you can assemble and disassemble, and therefore it's type. We tend to think of type as something for printing and for paper, but if we think of type as mechanical letters that have been pre-made, then this is type. And these letters we've seen throughout New York, other cities. That R is very distinctive. Always look for the R. Most of the lettering in Tudor City is trying to stick with the Gothic roots, so that you find black letter and you find uncials or versals. I love Tudor City. It's just one of the most rich sources of lettering in New York City, all in one place. And we've got two examples right here on the building. It's number 324 East 41st Street. Versals are uncial in structure, some of them, like this E and this N. But they're very different from uncials in that, you never would have seen a closed counter like that in an uncial for the letter E. You wouldn't have had some little decorations that have been added. The numbers, of course, are made up because we didn't have Arabic numbers at that point. It was still medieval Roman numerals. I like the way they've been carved in relief in this case. And we'll see something very different across the street, because one of the things that's nice about Tudor City is that there's a mix of these medieval styles. They're not all identical. Essex House, and you can't see the entire name because of the holiday wreaths, but you can see the uncialesque versals. There's the same uncialesque E and uncialesque H, very nice X. Below it is textura with the versal initials, and it says designed, constructed, financed by the Fred F. French companies, Anno Domini, and then it has the year spelled out in letters. So here we've got Mr. French putting his stamp on the whole complex, and the whole thing is this old English look. The one extra bonus about being at Tudor City is there's a couple areas where you can look out over the East River. If you look to the left, what we think is a pumping station, you can see the Pepsi-Cola script sign in Long Island City. The Pepsi-Cola sign is but one example of the lettering riches beyond Midtown, but those will be the subject of a future video.